Let me tell you about the birds and the bees and the flowers and the trees and the moon up above and a thing called love. Hello, everyone. I'm dressed a little ridiculously today. I got my shades on because it's so bright, but it's kind of chilly, so I've got my spouse's skull hoodie on. I'm also wearing my Tiana t-shirt. Maybe you can see it. Tiana is my favorite Disney princess, by the way. So I saw this t-shirt at Ross and I had to pick it up. I had to have it. So the song intro, today's episode of the X-Files that we are reviewing has a lot of sexy birds and bees talk and vibes, which is kind of strange because the quote monster in this episode reproduces asexually. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. It's pretty cool. But that's weird because there's a lot of sexy vibes in this episode. I know there's sexy vibes in every X-Files episode, but especially in this one, we are reviewing Season 2's episode, The Host. The Host is kind of a cult favorite in the series, not just among the fandom, but among casual viewers of the X-Files who just kind of have a casual grasp of the show and its mythos. I put out a poll on Twitter. I said I wanted to review a really gross episode of the X-Files, and this is the one that was voted in. And yes, it's extremely gross. I'll get to some of the nastier parts of it. But I didn't realize how many people just fucking love this episode. And I can see why. It feels like a Darren Morgan episode. If you don't know who Darren Morgan is, he is the guy who wrote the only good episodes in the X-Files revival. Seriously, that's not a joke. He also famously wrote episodes like Clyde Bruckman's Final Repose and Jose Chung's From Outer Space. Probably two of the most famous X-Files episodes. But he also starred in the X-Files. He played Eddie Van Blunt in the episode Small Potatoes, season 4. And he plays the monster, the Flukemen, in this episode of The Host. And I think his performance makes this episode kind of feel like a Darren Morgan episode. Kind of spooky, kind of weird and gross, but also kind of campy and hilarious. And I think it's his performance that gives that vibe to it, because this episode is written by Chris Carter, and we know what a brilliant writer Chris Carter is. I really think the actors' performances in this episode was its saving grace, and it's a really fun watch. I would say to people who are coming into the X-Files, I get asked a lot, like, what episode should I watch that could hook me to the series? And I would say this one. Watch The Host. If you watch The Host and you don't like it, you might not stick with the X-Files, because this is a really good one. Okay, so we'll get to the makeup and props department and Darren Morgan's I can't talk today, performance of the Flukeman in a minute, because I really want to talk about it. So let's dive right in. Cheers! Happy January. I'm drinking a Pepsi Cola. Cheers to you. Ooh, it's good. With just a tiny baby shot of Kentucky bourbon. Do love bourbon, man. Fireball whiskey is my drink of choice, but bourbon's pretty good. So the episode begins with this Russian steamer ship, and you see this lad named Dmitri, and I do these like rewatch threads on Twitter before I record my reviews. It's kind of to help me like get my thoughts together and take notes. And I said, people named Dmitri in this series have the worst kind of luck. Thinking of the kid in Patient X. Poor Dmitri. God, pour one out for Dmitri. So this Dmitri is being told by his boss to go clean out the ship's toilets. And boy, I felt that down to my soul. If you're ever the new person on the job, you get the shit detail. In this case, very literally. Um, so Dmitri goes. He's grumbling in Russian. There's subtitles, thank God. I don't speak Russian. I speak 2 words in Russian. I can say yes, da, and I can say no, niet, and that's it. So, if I ever go to Russia, it'll sound like a fucking Beatles song. Well, hello. How are you? No, don't put your butt in my face. Thank you very much. My cat has this weird, like, dominance thing where she has to, like, put her ass in my face when I'm recording, so there's nothing wrong with her. She's just kind of a pill sometimes. So, Dimitri's, like, feels a clog, reaches down to unstop it, and something grabs him. And I gotta say, is this the piece of media which caused a generation of children to have a crippling fear of outdoor toilets? Because still to this day, I will avoid using a porta-john if I can at all manage it. So, something grabs Dimitri, pulls him down into the toilet. His boss comes. You see his boss, like, really, he was like, oh, I was just playing a joke on this kid, making him do the shit detail, and now what's happened to him? You see that look on his face. And you just hear him calling, Dimitri, Dimitri, into the darkness. So, if you think that's the last homoerotic tension in this episode, boy, howdy, are you wrong. So then there's the title sequence, and we see A1 Fox Mulder. He's in his depression hovel at the bureau, listening to recordings. He's also got this little football game going where he's like set up a paper cup and he's like flicking sunflower seed husk into it. Did a variation of that, many variations of that game in elementary school. So the door opens. Mulder looks like Gollum. Have a light. I can't do a Gollum impersonation, but he looks like Gollum with the light shining on him. He looks like a little cave troll. These 2 agents come in and they're like, "You've been called on a murder investigation by Mr. Skinner." And Mulder goes to Newark, New Jersey. And he meets this detective, and the detective is giving off like heavy Lin-Manuel Miranda vibes, which I love. Okay, Lin-Manuel Miranda is my boo. He's great. So, not Lin-Manuel Miranda, like, says, "Oh, well, we're glad to turn this over to you guys, the FBI." And, excuse me, one of the officers gets Mulder some rubber boots. That's right, spooky boy, you're going down the sewers. And, oh my gosh, Mulder acts like the biggest fucking queen. When he goes down in the sewers, and I'm like, get it together, guy. Stop being a baby. You're a federal agent. Anyway, they go down in the sewers, and they find this body. On my Twitter recap thread, my Twitter rewatch thread, I did a poop joke counter on this episode. There's a lot of poop jokes. And you know what? Poop jokes are funny, and it's very fitting in this episode because a lot of it is spent around shit. So, you know what, Mr. Carter, I'm not going to blame you for that. It's a good call, man. So, I'm not going to even attempt to count the number of poop jokes. If you have some spare time, go at it. Leave me a message in the comments. So there are some really cute ones where it's like the detective says, if you don't breathe through your mouth, it cuts the smell. And then Mulder's like, they were wrong. So there's some pretty cute ones. I'll point out some more in a little bit. So they see the body. And the detective is like, this is a dead body. What do you want to do with it? And Mulder just has a fucking tantrum right there. He's like, Mr. Skinner's shitting on me. He's just having a goddamn hissy fit. So this brings up an interesting point. If something is not connected to an X-File or to spooky shit, supernatural shit, Mulder can't lose interest fast enough. And in this case, it's even more annoying. His behavior is even more annoying because it has the potential to be spooky, Mulder. Like, it's a mysterious death. And, like, even if it's not, it's still important, bro. This innocent man died, and whatever killed him is still on the loose. Trying to kill other people. Like, it's still important, Mulder. But Mulder's like, it's not important if it's not an X-File. And, like, that attitude just rubs me the wrong way. Like, oh, okay, so just because this isn't connected to your little quest for validation, I guess this man's life and, like, his family who are worried about him or need some closure, I guess that's not important. You know, if it's not part of your little fucking self-centered quest. This will be the first time. I need a counter where I say fuck you to Fox Mulder in this episode. So, Mulder goes to Skinner's office. And let me tell y'all something. I have never shipped Mulder and Skinner, but I get it. I totally get it. Especially after watching this episode, rewatching this episode. I'm like, yeah, I get it. I totally get that ship. So Mulder demands to see him. He comes to Skinner's secretary and he says, I've got to see him. And she opens the door. She's like, Mr. Skinner, Fox Mulder's demanding to see you. Skinner comes up, okay, and he says, step right in, Agent Mulder. Agent Mulder starts just having another little hissy fit about how, like, Skinner's just like trying to troll him with this case. And just, it's, oh God, he's having like a little 5-year-old tantrum, like the tantrums 5-year-olds have at fucking McDonald's. So then you see, of course, there's a room full of people. And I kind of get what Skinner's doing. Like, he's kind of like showing Mulder he can't behave this way. So he's kind of humiliating him for like behaving in this way. But then when you look at the scene, Mulder's talking and Skinner's like looking at Mulder's perfectly pouty lips. He's just staring at them. Mitch Pileggi's kind of like bobbing his head like this. And I'm like, Mitch, you don't have to go so hard on this scene, my man, but I appreciate that you did. And then Skinner's like making Mulder like say to the other agents in the room like why he's having this tantrum. And I'm like, again, as in Dwayne Barry and Ascension, you kind of get these BDSM vibes from the Mr. Skinner Mulder interactions in this episode. Like, the Skinner Mulder ship, I can definitely see it. So, after that incredibly homoerotic scene, Mulder goes to a secret waterfront meeting with Agent Scully. A couple things. Mulder and Scully are so turned on by meeting in secret and by having these secret aliases for one another. It oh my God, it turns them on. They get off on it so hard. So and even like their little banter, I'm like, oh my God, guys. Alexa, play Love Story, Taylor's version. So Mulder's like, I be warned, I'm having violent impulses. And Scully's like, I'm armed, so I'll take my chances. And I'm like, oh my God, guys, get a fucking room. So Jillian is heavily pregnant here. a lot of people hate on Scully's look in this episode. And where the fuck is that coming from? She looks amazing. She's got these little depression bangs. All right. Her hair's like curling under her ears. She's got the perfectly round, pregnant face. She's just fucking adorable. Like, even her little fingers are swollen, and I'm like, oh my God, this is wonderful. Could stare at this woman for hours. So then, of course, Mulder, like, especially in this episode, and I know he does it in every episode, he can't, like, put aside his self-centeredness for a flaming hot second. And he's, like, whining to Scully. I gotta say, I don't like Mulder, but whiny Mulder is the worst version of Mulder. Whiny Mulder is worse than season 6 Mulder, if you want to know how bad whiny Mulder is. This guy, I want to, like, shove him in a trash can. Like, I'm like, grow the fuck up, you little bitch boy. So then, he keeps telling Scully, he's like, this case doesn't matter. It's a 0. Like, Skinner's just rubbing my nose in this. And I'm like, no, bro, it's still important. Like, this guy still died under mysterious circumstances. It's still important that you solve this case, you know, so his family can have closure. But of course, Mulder just, again, if it's not connected to his quest, if it doesn't serve him in some way, Mulder could care less about people. But then Scully's like, well, you have something, you have a body. And she's like, you know, let me do the autopsy for it. It very much reminds me of the X-Files pilot, where these mysterious circumstances were happening and Mulder was like, ho hum, guess that's the explanation. Get it? Guess it just can't be explained. And Scully's the one that wants to do the digging and, like, find a solution and discover something about this. Where are people getting off on Scully being a close-minded, willfully ignorant bore? I do not see it. Scully is a scientist. She wants to discover, and she has a sense of wonder and fascination, and she wants to just make discoveries because she's a scientist. And if something happens that's weird or mysterious, if she has the scientific proof to it, she will believe it. And that's the case here with the Flukemen. Like, Scully has undeniable, substantial evidence to this thing, and she absolutely believes it. Later on in the series, like in The Field Where I Died, I think is the episode, she's like, the Flukemen thing, you know, I would have done just fine without that. Like, yeah, she's not denying that. She knows that happens because she had substantial evidence to it. So, like, anyway, fuck off, all you people saying Scully's, like, willfully ignorant. Fuck you. Mulder's the willfully ignorant one. Okay. So, like, Mulder's the one. Yeah, anyway, I don't get that. So anyway, there's also this line where Mulder's like, I'm just gonna quit the bureau, like, rage quit, like a little 5-year-old. And Scully's like, you could, what does she say? You could request a transfer to Quantico. And just the way she says it, like, I'm like, ouch, my heart. Ouch, my heart. Anyway, that, God. In this episode, Scully is very much in love with Mulder. Like, definitely see it. Mulder, I believe, is in love with Scully, but of course he can't put aside this selfish quest for validation and commit to her. And he never does. Like, again, I'll say people that are like, oh, but season 11, Mulder, he's like, so, like, he's so concerned about Scully. Yeah, because he's scared of losing her. Like, it's the only time Mulder, like, doesn't take Scully for granted is when he's afraid of her being taken away from him, which is super gross and misogynistic. I can't talk today. So, like, it really makes you wonder, especially further on in the season, like with episodes like In-Game, Colony and In-Game, like, what if Mulder had grieved his sister in season 2 and then moved on with his life and committed to Scully? Like, what a different and much better show The X-Files would have been if that had happened. And I'll die on that hill, man. The X-Files, again, could have been just this great show about two lovers, like, investigating spooky shit, and what a much better show it would have been without the problematic shit. But I'll die on that hill. So, Scully goes to do the autopsy. She's cutting into the corpse, and there's a fluke worm jump scare. It is such a jump scare, too. Like, it jumps out, she goes, ah, and I'm like, oh my god. It is a fluke worm. She pulls it out of the poor dead Dimitri. And Scully has a lot of, like, bad luck with things jumping out of corpses trying to grab her. Like, it happens in this episode, it happens in, Millennium, it happens in Bad Lot, it happens in Roadrunners. Like, what's going on there? You know, just another delicious dimension of flavor in the traumatized Scully ice cream sundae. So you see these sanitation workers. They're at the same site that the dead man was found. And this one guy gets pulled underwater. Needs to be a drinking game for this episode every time someone goes swimming in poo water. Mulder definitely does the best. We'll get to that. So, this poor man, he's getting pulled under. He's, like, drinking gallons of it. And I'm, like, just, I'm over here like a cat coughing up a hairball. So, the poor man goes to the doctor. He tells the doctor, he's like, I just want something to get this taste out of my mouth. Later on, this poor man, the sanitation worker, eats an entire tube of toothpaste. And I'm watching it and I'm like, you know, all moms of young children have had that situation where we just want to eat a whole tube of toothpaste, don't we? Like, raising children, small children, is disgusting. And there will be an instance, for those of you who have never had small children, there will be an instance where you want to eat a whole tube of toothpaste. Something that disgusting happens to you. You just want to, like, raw dog that toothpaste, baby. Just trust me. So, Mulder again goes in, and he cannot be bothered with this. Even though, like, this is a mysterious case. It might not be connected with an X-File. It might not be supernatural. But it's still a case where lives are at stake, Mulder. Like, anyway, wonderful scene where the doctor's talking to him, and she's like, what is this all about? And Mulder's like, I don't know. You see David, quote, subtly check his watch. He's like, this? And what's the Patrick Stewart meme where he's like, acting, good night. That's it. David's acting in this episode is just fucking terrible. God, it's so bad. Like, we'll get to some of his brilliant acting later. Like, oh my god, it's so bad. So, they take a look at this wound on this man's back. It's this giant, weird-looking bite mark. Mulder goes to see Scully. Let's break down this scene. First of all, she's like, close the door. In that fucking voice. There's a lot of AUs in fic where Jillian's pregnancy is part of the storyline. And Scully is pregnant with Mulder's child at the beginning of season 2. And I love that AU. I think that's great. Like, that's a wonderful AU. Like, she would have given birth to the child. Mulder would have settled down to be a father, and none of the traumatic shit would have happened to Scully. Like, yeah, I love this. I love this AU. Anyway, he comes in and she shows him this flukeworm she pulled out of the corpse. She said the little babies are parasites, of course, and they reproduce asexually. And I gotta say, asexual reproduction would probably cut down on a lot of drama that is linked to sexual reproduction. And I gotta say, the flukeworms are onto something. It would probably cut down on a lot of drama. I think humans should definitely evolve and adapt that feature. We should definitely adapt that. That would be good. So, Scully's showing this to him. Mulder's like, but look at this bite mark. It has the same bite mark as a flukeworm, but it's gigantic on the back of this man's back. The sanitation worker, likened it to like a python or something. And then Scully giggles and smiles. And oh my God, like every time Dana Scully smiles, a year is added to my life. Like that's how I feel about her smiles and laughs, because goddamn, it's like I mentioned in my review of the pilot episode, like there's very few times that she smiles and laughs in the X-Files. Anyway, she giggles and she says, it felt like old times there for a minute. And I'm like, again, ouch, my heart. Your Honor, Dana Scully is in love with him, you know? So, excuse me. You get these fantastic shots of Mulder and Scully smiling shyly, kind of averting their eyes. They look like dorky 7th graders, and it's so fucking cute. I love it. Again, earlier that day, Mulder had got a call, and if you've never watched the X-Files before, you don't know this, so spoilers. It was Mr. X. Mr. X, one of my favorite characters in the show. Definitely my favorite of Mulder's informants. Mr. X is played famously by Stephen Williams, aka the state trooper on the Blues Brothers. That is Mr. X's origin story. Is he was a state trooper and he got trolled by Juliet Jake and Elwood, and now he became like this dark mercenary government informant. Like that's his dark gritty origin story. Love Mr. X. Best character. You see him in this chair, he turns around and he says to Mulder, he's like, "You have a friend in the FBI." And Mulder just kind of hangs up and he's like, "Well, that was fucking weird." Then when he goes to see Scully and she shows him the flukeworm, he's like, "I don't know who you told about this." I'm like, bitch, you really don't trust her, like, after all you guys went through in, like, season 1, not to betray a confidence? Like, Mulder's a little bitch boy in this episode, he is. Particularly, he's Skinner's bitch boy, or her. So, Scully's like, "Hey, look, bitch, I never betray a confidence, okay?" So Mulder goes to show the worm to the water treatment plant people. I don't know what their particular term is. Sanitation director? I don't know. Anyway, the Sex Files podcast said the true American heroes are the sanitation workers in the United States. And I'm like, yep, I 100% agree. Having done that job coming out of college, I'm like, yeah, I totally agree. 100%. They are the true American heroes. They deserve our recognition every day. So, goddamn, sanitation workers, they do not get paid enough. So, he goes and shows it to the treatment plant manager. Love this guy. He is amazing. Okay. I want a whole fic about him. He has these cute jokes. He says, everyone calls me every day on the porcelain telephone. I'm like, okay, Chris Carter, that's a pretty fucking good poop joke. He also like has this really cute relationship with one of the sanitation workers named Charlie. Hello, fic were their husbands. Okay. I headcanon the sanitation plant manager and Charlie are lovers. They're boyfriends. That they're husbands. That's my headcanon. So Mulder shows him the worm, and the guy's like, that's a big old worm. I just love that scene. Also, Charlie like goes down to like look at the stuff. I don't know the technical term for it. And he sees this half-human guy thing in the poo water, who is, of course, the Flukemen. And I love how the Flukeman, the monster in this episode, just shows up at the treatment plant right when Mulder gets there. And again, this is a great example of the writers, the X-Files writers, just giving Mulder the answers. So he doesn't have to do any kind of detective work. They're just like, let's just hand him the answers. Like, it's fucking lazy writing. So Mulder goes down there and they see the Flukeman. He's this... It's really hard to describe him, but his design is fucking awesome. Just go to Google. If you never watched the X-Files, go to Google Photos and like look it up. Kind of looks like a mummy, but he's got this like round mouth with 4 fangs, but then you see his human teeth under that, and we'll explain later why that is. And you see his eyes like flicking back and forth, and it's one of those things. So I love when the X-Files leans into horror, like in Home. And I love when the X-Files leans into like camp, like in Arcadia or Jose Chung's From Outer Space. The Host is a beautiful mixture of that. Camp and horror collide. And it just... And again, I think it's a lot of like Darren Morgan's performance as a Flukeman. Like, it works. It fucking works. It's scary and it's also hilarious. And Darren Morgan, as you see in his writing, is really good at that, combining like elements of horror and camp and humor to like make this beautiful, eccentric writing style. And that's very much like channeled in his performance as the Flukeman. And it's that thing where like, you know, this is a mask, like, you know, this is a costume. But with the X-Files, I mentioned this in my review of Arcadia, it's like the monster in that episode is very campy. The monster in Shapes is very campy, but it's like, we know this is happening and it's fun and we're just all going to like go along with it and have a fun time. The Host is very much, when I watch this episode, I'm like, yeah, this is why I like the X-Files. Like this is why I've stuck with this show for almost 30 years. It's like, because it's like, this is it. Like, it's funny, it's fun, spooky times, and seeing these two people fall in love, and that's what the show should have been, without the traumatizing and torturing of Dana Scully. Like, there was no need for any of that. Like, this is a wonderful show here, with like two people falling in love, investigating spooky shit, and that should have been it. And it would have been a much better show. So, anyway, I'll always get on that soapbox in these reviews. So, they get the poor Flukeman out. Let's talk about the Flukeman. So, the Flukeman is probably, more than any other, quote, monster in the X-Files, is just operating on instinct. Like, he, or I guess it, does they. I will call the Flukeman they, okay? So, they do not know any better. Like, they're just reacting to their instincts. Like, they're attaching themselves to these people to like pass along their baby fluke worms and procreate asexually. Like, that's what they're doing. they're putting their baby fluke worms in the people they bite, and the baby fluke worms are hatching out and therefore killing the people. And the fluke man, the fluke person, does not know any better than to do this. Why is he being vilified? We'll talk about it at the end, where Scully has this great quote about this. So, they put the poor thing in like this, they're holding him in this jail. And I feel sorry for the fluke man. Like, they don't know what they're doing. They don't know that it's wrong. And these people are like just essentially torturing them. And like, I feel very sorry for them. And I'll discuss that in a minute. Scully comes and they peek in at the fluke man. Cute shot where they're both looking through that round window. And then there's a scene where Scully like backs off from the door and Mulder's like right behind her. And I'm like, fix where they have rough sex in this scene, please. So, send me all the fics where they have sex in that scene. So, it's kind of funny. There's an honest to God Flukeman monster being separated by a thin door. And Scully is just so hung up on her love for Mulder, she can't even focus on it. She says to Mulder, she's like, I don't know what you're going to put in your report to Skinner, but I just want you to know that if you leave, I'll take it as more than a professional loss. And I'm like, oh my God. And then right after that, Mulder like looks right back at the fluke man and he says to Scully like, huh? What? Like he hadn't even heard. And I think a lot of that is just David's terrible acting here, but it's pretty fucking funny. And then Scully gets this look in her eyes, just screaming internally behind her smile. She's like, ah, inside her brain. So, then, they take the fluke man in an ambulance. And the U.S. Marshal who's transporting them is Buddy from Chinga. I was like looking and I'm like, I know that creepy handlebar mustache. I know that creepy handlebar mustache anywhere. It's Buddy from Chinga. He's one of the cops in Chinga who the evil doll whacks. So the fluke man's great. They have him like strapped down to this gurney. He's not struggling or anything. They are not struggling or anything. And the Buddy, I'm calling him Buddy, he like looks back and then he looks forward and then he looks back again and the fluke man's fucking gone. And I'm like, that's pretty terrifying. He like pulls over and then you just see the cab of his truck and he's screaming. So pour one out for Buddy. Hey, Buddy, we'll see you in season 5. You won't meet a good end there either. There's also a shot where Buddy is getting mauled, ? By the fluke man. He's getting hickeys. He's getting hickeys from the fluke man. And you just see this sign and it says live bait. And I'm like, I get it. So then you see this portable toilet in the scene that traumatized a generation of children so that they won't use porta-johns. And this guy is flushing it out into a septic tanker truck. The guy's flushing out a porta-john and all the time just like handling his cigarette. And I'm like, with the glove he's using to flush the potty. And I'm like, yeah, good. Yeah, I'm sure that's a great idea. It's like the people in this episode like don't even need help from the fluke man to get an infection because they're just all dumbasses. So then the fluke man's hiding in the porta potty and he jumps out and kills the poor sanitation workers. Sanitation workers can't get a fucking break in this series. So great callback to this scene in the episode. Mulder and Scully meet the weremonster, which is, hey, written and directed by Darren Morgan. It might not be directed, but it's definitely written by Darren Morgan, and that's a really cute scene. I can't wait to review Mulder and Scully Meet the Weremonster. It's so good. They jump to a porta-john. They think the monster's hiding in there. And they open it. It's just a guy like sitting on the can. And Scully looks, and then she has this very embarrassed look on her face, and she's like, oh, and she goes away and hides. It's very cute, very nice. So, they go back. Mulder goes back to see the plant manager. They go to the sewers. They hear the Flukeman's escaped. He's gone back to the sewers. Flukeman just wants to live and be free. Leave him the fuck alone, okay? He'll go in the sewers. He'll go out in the ocean, and he'll attach himself to a goddamn orca or a whale shark or something. So just leave him alone. Just leave him alone. I can fix him. So, the plant manager like goes down. The Flukeman grabs him, pulls him in. The poor plant manager. He did not have to die. I fucking love that guy. Mulder jumps in after him, and Mulder is swallowing this poo water. He is just swallowing gallons of it. And again, I feel like a cat coughing up a hairball on the rug. It's so fucking nasty. I'm just gonna say this is the nastiest episode of the X-Files. Like, and it doesn't have any problematic shit in it, really. It does have one, like, really homophobic line from Mulder, where he says, I'm getting tired of reaching down and grabbing my ankles. And I'm like, fuck you, Mulder. Take that homophobic talk out of here, you homophobic motherfucker. Mulder's ableist, sexist, homophobic, racist. He's all the ist, isn't he? Boy, oh boy, is he a white man in the 90s. So, and then there's a scene where this guy, the first sanitation worker who's attacked, he yaks up one of the baby worms in the shower. And I put out on Twitter, I'm like, in the X-Files, I can handle Toombs, the weird incest family from Home, Leonard Betts, the creepy slug cult from Roadrunners. But I gotta say, I draw the line at that guy yakking up that goddamn worm in the shower. I'm like, nope, I'm out. I can't watch it. So back to the scene in the sewers. Mulder's drinking poo water like he's thirsting to death. And he sees the Flukeman trying to escape from a hatch. He pulls this hatch down. I don't know the technological term on it, and poor Flukeman's cut in half. So then Mulder and Scully go and meet in front of the Jefferson Memorial, and Scully's telling him, like, this is a person who was affected by radiation from Chernobyl. And he mutated these qualities to make him more of an animal than a person. She says, this, what does she say? She says, the monster didn't do this, we did, or something like that. I can't believe I didn't write that quote down. So in the X-Files, there's this thing where there's a monster, a quote monster, a person who is doing things, or a creature who is doing things beyond their control, like the Flukeman. I'm thinking of Jake Gyllenhaal's character in Hungry in season 7, another great episode. They're doing these things beyond their control. And it makes them very sympathetic. Like, they can't help this stuff. They're as much of a victim as the people that they're hurting through this. This is a potential to be a very sympathetic storyline. But the X-Files never does this. They never have any kind of redemption or any kind of sympathy for these characters. In Hungary, I'm always surprised. I'm like, wouldn't they want to help this person? Like, but they don't, especially Mulder. Like in Hungry, he very much shoots Jake Gyllenhaal's character without a second thought. Like, and it always surprises me that the X-Files sets up these storylines to have a very sympathetic and redemptive arc for these characters, and they never do. But then they preach this thing of like, oh, the monster didn't do this, we did. Okay, then why don't you do something to help these people and write storylines where they're helped and where they're sympathetic instead of doing this? It very much reflects the writers in the room in the X-Files, that these were all privileged white men. Like, there was no diversity in the writers' room, and it reflects their feelings. There's a wonderful video essay on YouTube by Lindsay Ellis where she's talking about how monsters in horror films have changed, and how from the 60s back to the beginning of film, the monster was very much the villain, and the often, I'd say all the time, white man trying to kill the monster was the hero. From the 60s and 70s on, that changed. The monster became sympathetic, like an American Werewolf in London, and the person chasing them became the villain. The X-Files had a wonderful opportunity to do this, to make these sympathetic stories around these people who were suffering from these things and had no control over them, and bringing the evil men responsible to justice, and they never do. In the same way, Scully is never given any kind of room or agency or space to process her trauma or tell her story. And that's in the same vein. Like, it very much reflects just how these episodes were written by white men, and the way society treats white men. Like, they're always entitled. They don't even think about other people's, marginalized people, disabled people, women, minorities. They don't even think of their suffering. They don't even spare a thought to it. And it's reflected in the writing in the X-Files. So, but I want to end on a positive note. My brother was telling me, like, whoa, you always end these vlogs with like super depressing observations. So I'm going to end on a positive one. In Pusher, Robert Patrick Rodell picks up a tabloid. Also hilarious that Mr. X like slipped a tabloid under Scully's door, and that's how she was tipped off to this poor kid Dimitri being from Russia. It's pretty hilarious. Like, Mr. X is just in the grocery store aisle. This incredibly imposing dude in like a mustache and a black trench coat, just like he's sifting through tabloids. like me when I was 10 years old. That's pretty hilarious. But then in Pusher, Robert Patrick Modell, at the opening scene of Pusher, he's sifting through the tabloids too, and you see the Flukeman's baby, who survived, of course, and the Flukeman's child is still out there living their best life, biting whale sharks or sea lions and making lots of little Flukeman babies. So, in the words of Jessica from Arrested Development, good for them. Good for them. Make all those Flukeman babies. You deserve it. So that's the episode. That's the host. I had a lot of fun doing this one. My next episode, I'm going to be leading up to Valentine's Day. One of our plans is we want to do a Valentine's Day special for the X-Files, the first X-Files movie, Fight the Future. That's going to be a lot of fun. We're planning on doing that. And I want to like lead up to that with kind of a aw episode of the X-Files. I have a poll on Twitter. I am at raccoons_dead. Go vote. I think it's between Rain King, Millennium, and Existence. I really want an aw episode of the X-Files that just makes you feel all warm and fuzzy. I need one after this, okay? And a shower. I definitely need a shower. So also follow me. I am at Dead Raccoons Draws It on Instagram. I am at Dead Raccoons on DeviantArt. I am at Just Awful X-Men Art on Tumblr. And of course, I'm here. Leave a comment. Like and subscribe. Let me know what underrated X-Files episode you want me to review. I will see you next time. Bye-bye. Mwah!